Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Geeking Out podcast. I'm the Athletic Geek, and joining us for part two, only the second guy other than Livewire McGuire to get a second part, is Heath Hatton. Heath, thanks for doing this again, bud.
Oh, thanks for having me. I had fun the last time. Excited to be back.
I'm excited to have you back because there's a whole lot because the first time we really focused on AAPW, getting your start in wrestling, and we just barely mentioned your own promotion, Stride Pro Wrestling. Now, for those that don't live in this area, Stride is probably the premier wrestling organization in Southern Illinois. Uh, been going strong for how many years at this point?
Almost, five. Yeah, we've been going strong for a little over 5 years now. So,
So 5 years.
um,
Oh, sorry. Go
well, it's
ahead.
coming up. It's coming up. Yeah. So yeah, it's coming up on 5 years. This coming March will be 5 years.
5 years.
So
And not only is this first great just having pro wrestling in the area, um, especially in an area like this, but the Stride's done incredible things for just fundraisers for lots of just various uh, small towns around this area, clubs, sports teams, everything. Stride's really and truly made a difference in the Southern Illinois area, and uh, I guess we'll just start this off with we briefly touched on, but get in more detail. What brought about starting your own wrestling school uh, and Stride?
so really, to be honest, there's no the whole thought of doing of having Stride was honestly after AAPW was ending and Pro Wrestling Collision. um there was really no place around here to wrestle, and to get to wrestle, I was you were having to travel and go to all these different places and towns. And I had we had talked. I had done some private tryouts and stuff with some bigger companies, and I had really got my name out there. And I had kind of realized, you know, to make it to the next level and stay there, I knew what I had to do. And, you know, uh, what makes me happy is I've listened to your other podcast, and I've heard the Bull, and Tristan, and all the guys talk or be rad about how I'm a family guy. And so that's probably something I'm most proud of is I knew that the older my kid got, that the harder it was going to be to leave and be gone for, because after AAPW and even during, every Wednesday I was either in Olney or I was at OVW. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, majority of the time I was on the road. So it got harder and harder to leave. And so with that being said, I wanted to, I still wanted to wrestle because I'm absolutely obsessed with it and I love it, but I didn't want to be gone that much. And however, there was another company that was kind of running in the area, and the whole thing started was they would book me, and I was booked pretty regular, and they were really good to me. However, I would try to get some of my friends booked on the show. Jay Spade, a Farmer Billy Hills, guys like that. I was trying like crazy to get them booked, and Axe Allward, and they just would not let me. They just wouldn't book them. Well, I had got approached by somebody. His name's Mike Benavi, who had a dojo in the Marion Mall, and he had a wrestling ring. and he wanted to do training. And so he messaged me, and that's really, to be honest, what started the whole thing. There was never a plan to have a wrestling company or show. I just wanted to train. I was a personal trainer in my private life, and I worked at Gold's Gym for a long time, and so I enjoyed training, and I enjoy training athletes. So the whole thing was, I thought it would be cool to train wrestlers. I had been to WWE, I had trained there, I had trained a lot of other different places, I'd done a lot of other seminars, so I was kind of excited about being able to train people. And when it came about for me to have a show, the whole reason behind having the show was because I wanted to book my friends. So that's honestly how Stride started, was to be a wrestling school and to train my friends. So
Awesome. Well, for so very very humble beginnings to something that's now, dare I say, a staple of this area. Um, so I've had a couple of your students on uh, recently, Bud Galloway, B Rad, and I've asked them about your style of training. What kind of trainer you're like, and got their perspective. How do you feel, as someone who has an athletic background and has been coached before? How do you feel like your training or coaching style would be when you're bringing up new wrestlers?
well, we always say anybody. So other people have helped. Tony Flood has helped. Jay Spade has been a staple helping Red Daniels. And it's every single time I'm called the bad cop. So when I'm at practice, I'm sure it's he's here type of thing. Because here, I touched on this on your podcast, any podcast I've been on, I say the same thing. I don't know how to half-ass anything. I don't. It's not in my blood. It's not in my nature. So I'm a perfectionist, and you're going to do this right. And you're going to look the part, and you're going to do conditioning, and you're going to do, we're going to do blow up drills, and you are going to know how to wrestle safely, how to protect yourself, and how to protect your opponent. And we're going to learn, but you're also going to be in shape, and you're going to be able to do this. And I tell them, this is my rule. You can ask me anything you want to ask me. Please, by any means, ask me anything you want to ask me. However, I'm going to be honest. So, if you're sensitive or something bothers you, or you can't handle, not negativity, but constructive criticism, then you probably don't want to ask me, because I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. And so when I'm there, I work out every day. I built a home gym at my house. And so every day I work out, and when I work out, it's time to go type of thing. And it's the same thing at wrestling. When we're there, we're going to work. So we are here to wrestle. We are here to work. We are here to train. And so sometimes that does not make people extremely happy. And I've had people quit. We've had people walk out. I've had people mad at me. I've had people make Facebook posts about me, you name it. However, I like to say, I'm the nicest guy in the world. I will give anybody the shirt off my back. I will do anything at all to help anybody I can. However, with that being said, I also, when it comes to training and wrestling, my job is to train you how to wrestle. At that time, however, I do not value, I'm not your friend at that time. Bud Galloway or B-Rad, who was on your podcast, I'm sorry, during training, when we're training to wrestle, I am a firm believer in I'm not your friend. So now, Tristan and, and Garrett, I'm friends with those guys. Those guys, I consider them my friend. However, like when I'm your trainer, I'm not your friend. So, um, that's unfortunately the way it is, and that's the way I feel like it needs to be. And and so when it's time to come to practice and it's time to train, unfortunately, I don't get that. And when we're in the ring and we're doing stuff, I'm viewing them as clients, as people I'm training, as pupils. And when they leave, they're representing me. And people are going to say, who trained you? Who'd you work with? And they're going to say my name. So I'm very, very picky about, and like I find myself yelling and getting mad and yelling, and just the other day at practice, man, I lost my mind and I yelled and I got pretty hot and I yelled at the guys. And then, I don't realize I'm doing it, but like, that's just, I can't help it because it's, I know that, at any wrong moment, if you do something wrong, you could hurt yourself or you could hurt somebody else. And so I can't have you not doing it the right way. I can't have you, not in shape. I can't have you mental. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. So, I listen to the other guys on your podcast. And they're like, he's fair. They don't want to say he's an asshole. So I mean, when but I'm not that way. When they message me or they call me, we'll have a conversation and I'll watch their match and I'll explain. But when we're training, I am that, and I can't help it. But it's not anything personal. It is, they pay money to train. They pay money to be a certain way. It's my job to get them there. And at that point, it's all friendships aside, because at that point, it's my job to make sure they are able to protect themselves, protect everybody else, and also have a successful career in wrestling.
Um, so even though I've had quite a few local wrestlers on the podcast, this isn't strictly a pro wrestling channel, and I know that there are quite a few subscribers to this channel who maybe don't understand wrestling or don't follow wrestling. They, subscribe to me for the artist interviews or the comic and anime and gaming related content. So, in case one of those subscribers is listening to this episode right now and doesn't, I don't want to say that they disrespect wrestling or anything of that nature, but maybe they aren't quite aware of what it takes to be a pro wrestler, what pro wrestling training's like. Someone who thinks that it's just, what they did when they screwed around with their friends in 2001, emulating Stone Cold and The Rock. How would you, if you could, like, to reach out to that audience right now, explain pro wrestling training and what goes into being a wrestler? How would you do it as a trainer yourself?
So the first thing, that people don't understand is basically a bump is a burpee, and it's a burpee backwards. And every time you land, it gets the wind knocked out of you. So imagine basically if you've ever slipped on ice or slipped on something and fell. So it's just like that, but training your mind to do it and not put your arms down. So lots of people have slipped on ice and fell, and that's essentially how we learn to fall in wrestling. Now, with that being said, you are constantly, you're dizzy when you first start. You get so turned around. So for anybody who questions wrestling, I say go do about 100 burpees and then go do about 5 or 6 somersaults, forward rolls, basically. Do 5 or 6 in a row, and then get up and then try to run back and forth 7 or 8 times. And I guarantee once you do that, your your mind is going to be so incoherent and so confused on where you were. It's almost like pin the tail on the donkey. That's what wrestling training feels like. And so about the first 6 months, that's how your body feels. Is like you're playing pin the tail on the donkey, and you're doing that while trying to protect somebody else. Because a wrestling ring, it's wood, it's wood and a real thin mat, and so just you hear people all the time that get hurt, and there's no way to stop it from happening. And they're like, oh, the punches are fake because they watched, when The Rock did the press on or Stone Cold did the Luthez press on The Rock. You could tell those punches were fake, but nowadays, you watch and they don't look as fake. That's because they're not. People are getting to where they're really hitting people and laying stuff in, and you smack somebody in the chest, it's a real smack. I mean, so that's what wrestling training is getting to is getting past that, and it takes a long time to get past that. So most people, I'm like, go out and do 25 burpees and then do 5 or 6 front rolls, and they can't do it. And that's essentially what it is it's a backwards burpee. And me being how I am and how old and out of shape I am, I'm like, I'm not doing 25 bumps in a match. But you know, me and Tony Flood did an Ironman match for Stride, and I did probably about 25 bumps. So it's very much it's I did boxing, I did some MMA stuff before. The conditioning for this it's a lot harder because you're basically in MMA and boxing, I was training myself how to not get hit and how to punch and move. And this, I'm teaching myself how to get hit. So it's very difficult, but it's not easy. And to be honest, we have a lot of people that start out and then quit, that just can't do it, and it's too hard. It's too hard on their body to quit right away.
Um, can for again someone who you know I'd like to think most of my subscribers don't disrespect the art form of pro wrestling, even if they're not necessarily here for the wrestling content. But to elaborate even further, let's say one of them said, "Oh, that should be fine. Let me do some wrestling training." And they show up at your school and they say, "I'm committed. Let's do this." As much as you're willing to let be public, take them through the first, session of the Stride Pro Wrestling School with Heath Hatton. What would you do to them? What would you make them do? What would their first night be like?
So usually the first thing I do is I set everybody down. I have a one-on-one. I tell them who I am, where I've been, what I've done, my credentials, my qualifications. And then I tell them a little bit about Stride and what Stride is. And then I tell them the first thing that I tell everybody that wants to come and train. Wrestling is not AEW. It's not WWE, indie wrestling. Those are dreams, and those are big productions. Those are arenas. Those are big locker rooms. Now, the in-ring wrestling's the same. However, indie wrestling is a small dressing room most of the time. It can be 50 people. It can be 300 people. It could be 8 people. And so you don't know. So, however, if there's 8 people or 8,000 people, you got to be the same person because you never know who's watching or who's wrestling. So I tell them, don't think that you're coming to Stride and there's going to be a big jumbotron and there's going to be 8,000 people screaming your name and you're going to be on TV. Like, you have to love wrestling. You have to love it. Like you to do indie wrestling, and there's like a certain feeling that you need to have about wrestling, because a lot of times It's, Mikey McFinnigan was there the other day, and he said something I had him talking to the trainees, and he said a lot of times you're in a car for 14 or 15 hours for a 10-minute match. So that tells you how much you have to love wrestling, that you will drive 15 hours to have a 10-minute match and then drive 15 hours back home. So you have to absolutely love it. And your body is going to break down, your body's going to hurt. Training's not easy. The first 2 years you wrestle, you're probably going to suck. You're probably not going to be good. And so we go through that. That's the first thing I do with and I make sure they understand that because I don't want them to be disappointed. I'm like, how many people do you know personally that have made it to WWE? How many people do you know personally that have been signed? It's a long, long, you can do it, but it's a long journey. Bull Bronson the other day was at the school and he said, I, he's like, I never wanted to go to WWE. I never had any desire. He just wanted to wrestle. He just loves wrestling. So he's a good example of somebody who he didn't care where he wrestled or for what company. He just wanted to wrestle. So that's the mindset you have to have. And so I explained that. Then basically the first couple is learning roles and learning, and we teach you how to bump, how to take a bump. So the first couple weeks, it is roles and learning how to bump. And then from there, once you know how to protect yourself, then becomes this is where people usually fall off is I'm getting you in shape. We do some blow up drills and stuff, but a lot of it is the technical stuff where you have to learn how to lock up, how to do, take the arm, take the head, get your feet right, how to sell, how to, and so a lot of people get real frustrated because, I used to show or explain to him. There's an episode of The Simpsons where Bart wants to learn how to do karate, and he goes, and the first day they're like learning how to breathe and how to punch, and Bart wants to know how to rip somebody's heart out and show it to him before he dies. And they're like, oh, that's after like 2 years, so he quits. And so that's a good analogy for wrestling because when I'm there, it's like, your foot's wrong, do it again. I just watched, we did a stride taping, and one of the trainees, his name's Dave Lyon, his wrestler name's David Lee Walker. Anyway, he put a guy in a headlock, and I stopped it, and I was so mad, and I sent a picture to Jay Spade, and I said, remind me to yell at Dave, because his feet's in the wrong freaking part on our TV taping. So that's how I am at training. I'm like, I get, but anyway, so that's kind of how it starts, is me being super anal about your footwork, about the way you move, about the way you walk around the ring, and then it's really just doing that repetitive for months, because you're going to learn how to do a body slam, and that's about it. Maybe some suplexes, a couple hip tosses, an arm drag, and the rest of it is going to be repetitive of your footwork, where to move, where to go into the ring. And then once you get past that, then we start working on a character. And so that is something that I wish that I would have learned in training, is I'm like, look, I'm not saying you got to be a firefighter. I'm not saying you got to be, a mailman or a police officer. I'm not saying that. Like, you don't have to be, the Fiend. You have to have something that says who you are. You have to have, Cody Rhodes, the American Nightmare. What you have to have something, the type of person that you're going to be, the type of person that you're going to be in that ring, because, Tyler Hatton, school teacher, softball coach, does not work in a wrestling ring. So, so that's kind of the way it is. For me, is like, I want you're going to be this person, but it's going to be this person amped up. And so I'm kind of that person in the ring, amped up. I think kids and people can tell I'm a good-hearted person. So that comes across in the ring. However, like I work with them, and I'm like, I mean, Dexter Roswell, who wrestles for Stride, he's a great example. He wanted to be this guy named Luke Chambers who dressed like Jeff Hardy. Anyway, he's pasty white, he's scrawny, and he's not even that type of person in real life. He has a high pitched voice, and I'm like, that's not going to work. You don't look the part. We can't. You got to do something else. And so anyway, we came up with the Dexter Roswell character, and he killed it, and he nailed it, and so that comes later on. But I try to explain this in the first sit down interview. I try to explain the roadmap, because a lot of times guys will, after a couple months, think, okay, I'm ready to go, and that's just not the case.
Um, that's very insightful because I mean I'm aware, or at least like to think that I'm aware. There's a lot more to wrestling than that meets the eye, but even just hearing that's gave me a whole new education on professional wrestling. So I appreciate that. Um, but I do want to switch gears a little bit and talk more about the Stride shows. Uh, before, or because we could just talk about the training philosophy for a whole nother hour
We could, yes.
and have a whole other episode about that. But so you run you start wanting to run shows. Again, I feel like a lot of people just kind of not due to any disrespect, but just due to being misinformed, think, oh yeah, you get a ring and you save up your money and you call some local guys that'll work for free and you try and search for a legend who will come in and pay the big money and you find a building that says, all right, we'll do it, and that's how you run a show. And that isn't necessarily the case. So before we get into the details of Stride, what go explain to the uninformed what it takes to put on an independent wrestling show, what it takes to get everything set up, all the minute details, all the stresses, and in some cases, what it takes to book that Hall of Fame legend, or book that former WWE wrestler, or that former uh, you know TNA wrestler, or what have you.
So the way that, like I know when Sean Maccabee was on yours, Chambers, he talked about how my company's successful because he thinks I've taken from each person and put it all together. And that is so true. I, I noticed watching other companies, like AAPW, we talk about how great Main Event was,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like if you break it down, they had 405 fans there. They had Pac, they had Generico, they had Cabana, they had Matt Cross, they had all these guys from Tennessee. And so, if tickets are $10 a piece, that's $4,000. By the time you pay your venue, you pay all that talent, you pay the boys, you record it. Do you make any money? And so that was one thing I learned, was like, okay, I want to build a show around the talent, where people are involved in the talent, and I'm not going to book names. So, that was how that originally started. But anyway, for me to book a show, I'm my wife will tell you, I'm kind of like, I am a planner. Like, I am a organized. I want to plan stuff. So I knew that I couldn't spend my own personal money every month on a wrestling show. So to have a show, from people that don't understand, like, you can get sponsorships, but you have to kind of go out, go get them, go see them face to face, and they're, at the end of the day, they're going to want to see a return on their investment. And with so much going on, because my daughter plays softball, and then schools need stuff, and so I don't like going out and getting sponsorships for a wrestling show unless it is a charity and then I want to be able to give that money to the charity. That's how I am, right or wrong. I'm a sucker for charity. I'm a sucker for stuff like that. That's honestly what I enjoy doing now more than anything, is doing shows for, different, that's the one thing I'm most proud of if you ask me. So Stride has raised over $100,000 for different businesses
Oh
in
wow.
5 years. $100,000. So that tells you, to me, that we've been successful. So now, do I wish I had that? I do, but I don't have any of that money. But so people don't. So how to have a wrestling show? Most of the time, I'm luckily we own two rings, so I don't got to worry about that. I had to buy them, but luckily we don't have to worry about that. But so most of the time to rent a ring is around $200. So you got to get the ring first. Then you got to get the venue, and most good venues are, I mean, they can be around $600-700. Most good venues are around 500, and so you're at that point. And then you got to get a music guy, and then from there you got to pay your talent. Now, depending on how much you book, who you book, your payroll can easily be anywhere from $500 to $1,000. So for talent. So just with those figures that I gave you, that's about $1,400 right there. So you got to have 140 fans to break even. That doesn't include insurance. That doesn't include anything else that you could think of. And that doesn't even include paying yourself. So that's about how much it costs to put on a show at the bare minimum. Now, that's no name, that's no Hall of Famer, that's no anything. So a lot of times when I first started, like I struggled because I love like wrestling, and I love all the people in it. And there are certain people that are friends of mine that I've wrestled that are like, hey, can I come in? I'll come in for 100. I'll come in for $150. And I'm like, I can't pay that. I don't want to offend you, but at that point, I'm going to have to dip in. If we don't have a crowd of 300 or 400, I'm going to have to dip into my own money and take that away from my family to pay you. And I can't do that. So a lot of times when these companies close and they don't do well, it's because after a while, and it's not to say they're not successful. A crowd of 200 people is not an unsuccessful crowd in wrestling. However, if you have to pay for all this stuff I told you, it sucks. It is. If you don't have sponsorship, or you don't have like an investor of some sort, or somebody helping you with money, that's why I noticed a lot of, we talked about at APW, there was a lot of chiefs, right? And
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of people putting money into a pot. That means when you have, like, let's say, me and Edmund and Kevin and you are running a wrestling company together, and we're all putting money in, that means all four of us have ideas. All four of us feel like we have a say because we're putting our money in. And that's where companies fold, because the more people you have putting money in, but that's the way it kind of has to be sometimes, especially in Southern Illinois. That's the biggest challenge. There's been times I've put a show on and Black Diamonds had a free fare, or I mean, and little things like an all-night skate, or anything, prom, a softball tournament, a base, all that stuff in Southern Illinois can pull away from you. And, a new hit movie. I mean, one time, believe it or not, we ran and the Avengers movie came out. And that, because, going to watch a movie is expensive. So that cuts into your pocket. And so I've been blessed, and I can say in 5 years, I've never lost any money. The
Wow.
lowest amount of money I've ever lost or made, one show, we made $12. I paid everybody. I paid the building, we paid for everything, and at the end of the day, I walked out and I had $12 to give myself. So that's the worst we ever did. And thankfully, um, I've never had to experience that. So right from the beginning, there was a girl I used to train at the gym. She actually passed away of cancer about a year ago, but they owned a company in Carbondale. They did like glass.
Hmm.
They gave us $1,000, and that's that. So the secret's out. People don't know. That's what started Stride, was
Okay.
that money. So we used that money to buy some stuff, to pay for the insurance, to buy a belt, buy a few other things, and then I put some money back, and that is how Stride got started. So that was how it all started with that. And the first show we ran one, believe it or not, we did not have a name. Their Stride ran without a name. So um, and and from there, Stride came along, and me and Matt Westbrook, you might know him, but his name's Matt Westbrook. He used to run iCall. Me and him were gonna do something together. He was actually, with his job, he played in a band. Me and him originally were gonna start Stride together, and we had sent each other back and forth 5 or 6 names. He sent me Stride. We decided at the time it came up for something like strength, like a bunch of other stuff.
I was just going to ask
Toughness.
you, where did the name Stride
It's
come from?
it came from like strength, toughness, like reservation. I don't know, a bunch of we came up. It had something at the time, but we never did anything with it. And then, like I said, I when Stride started, like I was doing the wrestling school, and they were like, "Hey, I think we should have a show." And so I was like, okay. So that was the first show that really I ever booked. I booked other smaller shows, but I booked it, and oh my God, like people came out and I mean, because there hadn't been wrestling in such a long time, and they came out, and it was so successful. And then like we just keep doing this. So then but when it first started, I was like, my main goal, my main focus was the school. I wanted to train people, and so but anyway, that tells you right there, to start a wrestling company, the amount of money and time. That's why I've worked so close with Zach and Dalton at Anafight Underground, helped them, sent them stuff, promoted them on our website, let them do videos, because I know to start a wrestling company, it's a challenge. It is hard, and it's costly, and it's expensive, and it's a headache. And so I feel for those guys, and for me, I'm like, look, this ain't my first rodeo. I've been here. Let me help you guys out.
And that's really cool that you're doing that, because in years past, um, I kind of got the vibe that you know there may be tension between promotions in Southern Illinois, promotions in St. Louis, promotions in you know kind of the Cape Girardeau area. It may not necessarily recently, but maybe back in the AAPW days, there might have been maybe I don't know. I just kind of got that vibe. So the fact that you're helping fight underground is really really cool. But that leads into my next question: is there in an area like this? Is there a lot of tension between the promotions, or is it more like a hey, if you're successful, maybe they'll come down to us, or if you're successful, maybe they'll come over here. What's
I
the
don't I don't think there's any tension. Like when we first started, I really relied on SICW with Herb to kind of guide me, and we kind of worked with them, and I brought guys up, that I was training to work up there. And now John Bach and IWAP is in Mount Vernon, um, and majority of his card is my trainees that trained and worked for me. So Like there's, now if they came and tried to run in Marion, you know, then it would probably be an issue. Or if they tried to run in Carterville or West Front, a place that is ours, why I say that is I have a really, really good relationship with all the schools around here. And with that being said, I'm very strict about it being family friendly, about like at the end of the day, I'm a school teacher. So that, it doesn't, I can't have stuff go online that happened at my show with me on it or me running it could that could screw that up.
Right.
So if somebody came into an area and they associate me with that, and so at that point it would be an issue and there would be tension because I would probably put a stop to it. And but luckily I have such a good relationship with these companies. It's like even Anafight Underground, being the way it is, and how unfamily friendly it is.
Right.
I know that going into it, I know what to expect, and again, I don't dislike that type of wrestling. Like one of my favorite wrestlers was Cash Borden. Even because I've really just for the longest time for years I've enjoyed his work, but like it doesn't mean just because I don't do that because I can't go to my job with a black eye or staples in my head. I can't, there's
Right.
no way I could do that. And um, with that being said, like that doesn't, just because I don't do it, doesn't mean that I don't like it. So I do like it. I do enjoy it. I just, however, I can't, I can't promote that. And, so for me, it's like, no, like, let me help you out. I mean, they, Zach and Dalton both worked for me. They've invited me to come in both times. They've met, I sent them Savion and B-Rad and Riser and Tony London. I've sent them guys that trained through me, that are still green, still training because I want them to help them out.
I do think
Um,
Savion and B-Rad stole the show on the first Anafight Underground card, and that's not a knock on the rest of the people, but I definitely enjoyed their match the most of all the other matches that first show, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to reach out to B-Rad to have on the show and uh, reach out to Savion.
Anybody that comes through Stride, they're all going to kind of wrestle the same because I'm big on psychology and I'm big on what putting matches together that makes sense. And I'm always giving feedback. And that is why I love what I do and I love Stride so much is I know that if they go to Anafied Underground, they are going to be able to have a good match. Or if they go to California, they are going to be able to have a good match and wrestle anybody. And so when I hear stuff like that, I get super excited because I know that like what I'm doing them and telling them is working. And just not too long ago, B-Rad and Savion just graduated from the school. So like that shows you how green they are, but how they have listened. And that to me is like the most humbling thing out of everything that we do is to know that they went to a hardcore type show, didn't have hardcore type training, but in that environment were able to have a match that captivated you and other people. So that speaks volumes to what we're able to do at my company.
Absolutely. Um, so getting back to your company, we've I had so many questions about Stride, and we've just gone in so many other different directions. I
Yes.
love this. But you know, you've done a lot of ran a lot of shows in the area. Um, you've kind of seen your company grow. I'm trying to think the best way to really word this. What do you think was the biggest growing pain to running a promotion in this area, and then kind of tapering off of that? What do you think was the easiest thing about being able to run a promotion in this area?
So, in all honesty, I mean, I think the thing that's helped me out the most is the people that I've surrounded myself with, as far as I guess you consider office personnel. So, getting Kevin, you know, Kevin is just he's that professional, like do whatever, helpful. He's like the little good angel on my shoulder that I call and I talk to and ask him, and he has that professional aura, but then he's also so intelligent and so professional that I have that. And then I have Sam Hunter, who's my general manager, who does all our graphics, and having him that I talk to, and he's actually he's just a wrestling fan. He was like in high school, I didn't have cable, and so every single Tuesday morning, I'd come in and ask Sam what happened, and that was us in high
Mm-hmm.
school, and so me and Sam go back to there. So surrounding myself with them, but then also having like Axe Allward that I talk to about wrestling things and wrestling ideas, and but then I also got to have like a newer class of people that I run stuff by, and like the last few years, a guy named Red Daniels has moved into that role because he watches a lot of AEW and newer stuff. And so I've surrounded myself with people. So that has been the easiest. That is, they help me out, and I have so many people I bounce ideas off of and I talk to, and then for the training I have Jay Spade who trained with me, so he has the same mindset and the same thoughts as me as far as training. Um, but then the biggest challenge, in all honesty, was getting people to understand my concept of we're going to tell storylines, we're going to develop characters, and we're going to treat these school shows as pay-per-views. And we're going to use our monthly shows to tell stories. And a lot of these guys had never, even at AAPW, they didn't really understand that I'd be like, no, guys, I want you to think 7 or 8 months down the road, not 2 or 3. Think 7 or 8. So here we are in October. Let's think about what we're going to do in March, and then let's work backwards. And so, because March has kind of been our Stridiversary, our WrestleMania. And so the first year was a huge challenge to get guys. The only real people that were buying into the storylines was me and Axe. And we were telling this great story, and me and Axe was drawing a crowd, but when we weren't wrestling each other, we weren't really drawing. And it was actually, I'm bragging on him again, but it was Red Daniels who came along, and then he understood it. And I put him with Jake Capone and Roger Mathis, and they were this power group, and they had got it. And I had like Homicidal Stephen Davis and Frank Wyatt, and then Joey O'Reilly and Jay Spade. I started developing the tag team, and then they, of course, got it. And they got the storyline aspect of it because they had been doing stuff like that up at Noble. So once I got everybody on board with telling these long stories and building and then telling them, look, guys, this show in December, just show them a little bit of this, because there was, Roger Mathis is a good person to use. We did a feud where me and Spade was, gonna wrestle for a #1 contender, and I was gonna put him over, and then he was gonna wrestle Roger. And I wanted Roger to come out and show that size difference and just stand over him. Well, Roger wanted to hit him. And I was like, no, you can't, because that takes away from what the crowd wants to see. They want to see you hit him, and they want to see him get hit by you to see how he reacts. We don't want to give him that this night. We just want to tease it. Anyway, Roger hit him. And I was mad. And I told him, I was like, you know, and so we had to have a conversation. And then a year later, he does a thing with Kevin. And I tell him that. And he doesn't. And it works like beautifully. And then, you know, we actually had him beat up Kevin's daughter. And that got like 10 million views on Kevin's TikTok. And, but anyway, it was getting them guys to understand. No, guys, like, sometimes less is more, and let's tell this story. Like, let's, you know, and that's where kind of, you know, we're at now with the COVID stuff. A lot of these tapings, we're just giving them a little bit until we can have a crowd, and then we'll, you know, we'll make it big with these storylines. But that was the biggest challenge, was getting guys to understand, like, yeah, you got to come in and wrestle, and you're going to wrestle a trainee, and they're going to start learn. You're going to beat them pretty handedly in about 6 or 7 minutes. However, at the end of the match, this is going to happen, or the match is going to start like this, and we're going to tell these stories. So getting guys to see my vision and see the way I wanted to do it at first was a huge challenge, because a lot of these guys had just, not, you go to different companies, they're like, I'm just going to book a name, and that's going to bring us in the crowd. And I'm like, no, guys, we're going to be the name. We're going to bring in the crowd. Like, we don't need to bring in these guys. I want to. I can't afford them. So we're going to make it where we are the stars. And then all of a sudden, man, coming up right after year 3, once we got our building, man, like we left the mall. We had done some really amazing things at the mall, and then we left, and we were kind of in limbo because the mall shut down. Once we got our building, man, we got our storylines going. Not to sound lame, we hit our stride, and then it just really, in between 3 and 4, and coming up, really in between 2 and 3, and then 3 to 4, man, it was just, it stinks because this year we were building some really cool stuff before COVID hit. So, but no, man, those were the 2 biggest challenges. I know it's a little long-winded answer.
Oh no,
but
that's great.
that was it.
That's great. So you mentioned that you would have some veterans come in and they'd have to wrestle a trainee. Don't have to mention any names if you don't wish to. But did you ever have a wrestling veteran maybe not be okay with that? Maybe kind of, for lack of a better way of saying it, did you have anybody ever go like Hardcore Holly on any of the trainees during a match? Did you ever had any issues with somebody who's like, what am I wrestling this greenhorn? Anything like that ever happen in your company?
Yeah, so there's been a few that I had to just ask not to come back, and a couple of them were really good friends of mine. Not that I was mad at them, like I understand, but that's how my company works. Is we're a training school, and I want B-Rad and Savion to be able to go to Anna Fight Ground and have a good match, and I want, and so many of them, Roger and Jay Capone were like, oh my God, bring Red Daniels with us. We want to travel. We want to help him. I stuck Scott Phoenix with Axe Allward, and he was like, oh my God, I'd love to do it. And so, and then I had El Magnifico wrestle Dexter Roswell for a long time, and they told the story. And so I've had guys that have just been amazing, but I have had guys that are like, I don't want to work with them. I don't want to waste my time. And it was, I don't want to put them over, and I don't want to work this guy. I don't want to work that guy. Like, I want to do this. But then, I have Zach Sawyer, who messages me just this morning and said, you have any guys that I could come in and wrestle that are green and want to help out? He's like, I love what you do there. So you have guys like that. Then you have guys that are like, I don't want to wrestle green guys. So I have had that, and luckily, I've had guys that disagree, But then at the end of the day, it's nothing personal. It's my company. It's the way I want to do it. It's what's been successful for us. So there's no hard feelings or personal feelings. If you don't want to come in and do this, then I'm sorry, I don't have room for you. So pretty cut and dry.
Right on. Um, so we did. You mentioned earlier that you want your guys to be the names, and you're doing. Even though I'm ashamed to say I haven't been to as many Stride shows as say AAPW, you do a fantastic job making these guys seem like these guys are your superstars, and you do a good job presenting them as your superstars. But there's been a couple shows I've been to where you did have that WWE Hall of Famer on your show. Jay the King Lawler, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, to just name a few. I talked a little bit with Sean about what goes into booking these names, but that was over 10 years ago. These are a little more recent. What is it like booking these names? Like, is it a hard process? Is it an
So
expensive
anytime,
process? Is it? Take me through that. Take me through what
so
I guess I should say. What makes you go, okay, for this one, we're bringing in a name? What makes that
so
decision?
I'll be completely honest with you. I've never booked one. So any of the names that have been brought up or brought in were usually like at Pinckneyville, where Jerry Travelstead took care of that. So I'll send him who I know that he can get in touch with, and they'll send him a list of available names, and then Jerry will book them. The guy in charge of 204 School, Jerry Travelstead.
Gotcha.
And then I've had other ones where somebody will message me and say, "Hey, like one time a guy messaged me and he said, "Hey, if I pay for it, can I wrestle uh, Bob Orton?" Well, of course. So I will be honest. The only person that I really talked to before was Abyss. He was booked at our show. I didn't book him, but he was doing a Hall of Fame induction the next night for TNA, and he wanted to know what he was doing. And so, but other than that, I don't. I know the process, and luckily I've met a lot of people where I could get names. However, I've never booked one, and so I've never talked to him. I've never gone through that. Usually, well, every name that's ever been booked, except for one, and that was a talent. The other one's actually Jerry Travelstead or the school booked. James Ellsworth, the company booked him. I didn't. I never even talked to him before. So all the other ones, Ricky Steamboat, Herb, I passed Jerry Travelstead on to Herb Simmons, who was bringing him in. So we did a show on Friday so he could double shot it. I mean, again, that goes back to my working relationship with these companies. So, yeah, unfortunately, I'm the terrible person to ask for because,
Oh,
again,
that's fine.
I've never done it. I've never, people will be like, "Hey, do they usually? How much does this cost or this?" And I'm like, I have no clue because I've never done it. So I'm like, yeah, I don't. I'll have people message me and say, "Hey, I can get this guy for $1,000," and I'm like, I don't have $1,000, so like I don't know what to tell you. I don't have the money to pay it. So unfortunately, I'm bad because I've never,
Oh, that's
we've
fine.
had them come in, but it's always been, like I said, Jerry Travelstead that's been the one that's done it.
Um, tapering off of that slightly, what went into thinking, okay, for this show, we need a Steamboat, we need a Lawler, we need James Ellsworth, we need Abyss? Was this your call, or was this like what was the with the meeting of the minds happen? What made you say, hey, you or whoever wanted to do it said
Well,
this is a good
see,
call?
that's why I'm different than most people because I love wrestling and I love wrestling fans and I love talking to wrestling fans. And with that being said, Jerry Travelstead is a gigantic wrestling fan. He loves wrestling. He goes to WrestleMania every year. He goes and he's a wrestling fan. So he wants to meet these people. And so he books them and he wants me to book a wrestling show around them. What I do is he tells me, hey, I'm getting Hacksaw Jim Duggan. So I'll tell a story that will involve Hacksaw Jim Duggan needing to help this guy. Or, Abyss was coming in and we were doing a story where, Roger Mathis was involved with these two guys and they were going to jump him and then Abyss was going to help Roger type of thing. I'll tell a story, but I don't ever, he'll message me and say, hey, do you think this guy will draw? Do you think this guy will do this? Do you think this guy? And I'll say no, or he'll send me this guy or this guy, and he'll send me the price, and I'll say this guy. And then once he gets him, I'll book the story. But it really just comes down to who, basically Jerry wants to meet and have at his school, and sign autographs and that he thinks he can make his money back on. So that's kind of how that goes into that. There's no, hey, you need to go get this guy. The only guy I ever recommended him get is I said, why don't you try to get Ryback? Because I wanted to wrestle him because I'm selfish. That was the only time.
Full. And of course,
yeah,
you're going to do the Hulk Hogan thing and get your win back, right?
Exactly. So that was the only. And to be honest, I've had names that have came in and asked to wrestle me, and I'm like, because I won't vary from the storyline, and I'm like, there's just certain times when I'm like, no, I want you to do this, or I want you to do that, and they're like, okay. So the only one that I ever said I wanted to wrestle if they booked him was Ryback, just for obvious reasons. But that of course never happened. Or if anybody ever booked AJ Styles, like he's my favorite, so I would ask to wrestle him.
Right on. So you mentioned, a lot of the storylines and how you've been able to, like you said, even AAPW didn't, until they got TV, weren't really doing a lot of storylines. I mean, there were some, but not really a lot. What do you think has been the most rewarding story and payoff that you've booked since Stride has began?
What is the what? What was that?
The most rewarding story that you've booked and told throughout your time in Stride.
Oh man, there's been so many that we did a thing where Tony Flood was fired, and then he came back as a luchador with a mask on, and then he took off the mask, and people legit did not know it was him in that reaction. My favorite, though, there's been, me and Roger built to a TLC match, and that was one of my favorite matches of all time. However, we told this story between Red Daniels and Chris Hargis, and it built to a Buried Alive match. And Red Daniels built this graveyard inside the mall. And we built to this Buried Alive match. And oh my God. So at the time, I think we had 525 people paid. And that was the highest show we had at that time. And the only promoted match was Red Daniels and Chris Hargis in a Buried Alive. And I think people just came to see what the setup was going to look like. But there was so many people that we ran out of chairs. People were standing. And anyway, Red lost. And then he was gone for over a year. And he kind of kept asking, when am I coming back? And I'm like, dude, just wait. And so we built this story to where Chris Hargis was getting ready to win what we call the Stride Cup. And the winner of the Stride Cup, it's basically a cash-in where you can cash in. It's a tournament. But at the end of it, you can cash in at any time, kind of like Money in the Bank. Anyway, before the match, Chris Hargis, in front of the crowd, beat up his opponent. And he was unable to go on. Well, at the time, Chris Hargis was being the king, and his manager, which was Jay Wellington Beauregard, was going to crown Chris the champion and or the Stride Cup winner and award him the number one contender. And of all people, we had Red Daniels return that night and face Chris Hargis. Anyway, when Red came out, it was in all the matches out of any indie show I had ever been to was the biggest reaction because nobody seen it coming. It was a huge crowd. And when Red came out, I was sitting at my like little gorilla position, and my head shot up, and Kevin was outside the ring, and his eyes lit up. And Jerry Travelstead and Sam and our music guy were like, oh, I mean, it was deafening. I've never heard a reaction like that. And it was, to me, it was like, I got goosebumps right now, no lie. That's how loud it was. And that was the first trainee to ever come through Stride. And we had built this story, and it was almost a 2-year story that captivated with him cashing in on me after the Ironman. It was just like it was gold. I mean, it was just the perfect storyline that they went with, and the fact that over a year later, 14 months later, our crowd still remembered it. And when he came out, I mean, it was just, I can't even describe to you. I've never heard anything like it. And I would like to say I've had some big pops or heard some big pops. Kevin Huntsberger Wrestling or coming back has been big pops. Nothing compared. I don't know what it was. I don't know about that night, but it was, I mean, it was special. That moment was, knowing that I wrote that storyline, but I wish it would have happened to me, but it didn't. But it happened to a trainee, a guy from Stride. I mean, it was amazing. That was the favorite thing that I put together for anybody.
Awesome. Um, we're gonna have to do a part 3, I believe, because there's a lot more we could do just after this one. I'd love to watch Stride with you and just listen to you kind of give what you're thinking as the promoter when all this is going on. I'd love to do something like that in the future. Um, the I remember last time we usually with the wrestling guests we do word association, but for this one I thought we'd try a little something different. I just wanted to hear from you. You talk about your guys and girls and what you like about them. Just let you have free reign to talk about who you think's the best, who you think's up and coming. Just because I'm sure I'll forget somebody on the word association. So I just wanted to put the ball in your court there.
I mean, we can just do like Stride guys. We'll
Right.
start with, Red Daniels. Just, he right now, I've been probably harder on him than anybody else. And, Red Daniels, the wrestler, is somebody I'm mean to, I'm hard on. But, he's right now lost almost 100 pounds and looks great. And that's like what I wanted from him 3 years ago. And his passion, he was the first trainee. His passion for wrestling is like just unmatched. He just loves wrestling. And then there's guys like Dexter Roswell, who, when Dexter realizes like the psychology aspect of wrestling, the sky's the limit for him. To be the top guy of a company, you have to have complete vision of what the owner and promoter wants for any company. That's what I had to learn. I understood why they didn't make me champ at APW, why they didn't make me champ at other companies, because I didn't understand the vision of what they saw. And once I figured that out, like that's when I took it to the next level. And so, Garrett or Dexter Roswell, he has to, once he understands that, because he's so good at telling his character story, he has to be able to tell the story in the ring, in the match, and then have the type of match that is that like just that main event, that main guy. Um, Garrett Galloway, all the potential in the world. Bud Galloway
He
has
is an
so
artist.
much. He's an artist. He will do, and he will come up with ideas, and I allow them. And he tells the thing that holds him back is he's got to finish his training. So, but he has a family, and I understand that. So, what he learns once a month at a stride show is not, it's going to take him longer to get there. And so he has all the talent. I love the artist gimmick. And he looks the part in the ring, and he looks like, you know, Galloway, obviously. And so he looks the part. He has an athletic background. He gets it. He just needs to finish his training to be able to quite understand how to put matches together and how to remember certain things and how to tell the character. B-Rad, I, I love the kid. He started out, he struggled. He, as most kids do at his age, struggles with constructive criticism. When he was doing something, it took him a lot longer because you would tell him, hey, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. And he would, he'd get mad, and he didn't understand that, like, no, I'm telling you this to get you better. And then, you talked about he won the legacy belt. He didn't know till that day. He came in, he goes, wait,
Really?
what? And I said, yeah. Like, I didn't tell him till that day because I needed to get where I had to go in my story. Some things had happened. Some people, because of COVID, couldn't come. B-Rad was in the right place at the right time, and we were already telling the story, and I didn't tell him. I said, no, you're winning. He goes, wait, what? So, and like a lot of things with these guys, with how I talked about how Dan is, or Red Daniels is in losing weight and getting in shape. That's the number one thing that a lot of these, Dexter Roswell, B-Rad, Bud Galloway, you have to look the part for somebody to take you real serious, or you have to be an amazing wrestler.
Right.
And so, those guys, but then you got guys like Jay Spade, who is just the best at selling, an absolute amazing seller. And you have Cash Borden, who, like I said, I've always wanted to work with, who I think the world of as a human being and a talent. And Cash Borden will come up to me and he'll say, all right, here's what I was thinking. I'm thinking that I'll be doing drugs in my car and you'll come out and then I'll pull out a knife and I'm like, Cash, stop. Like, no. Or he'll call me and be like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this storyline. What would you feel about me, and it'll be some crazy, and I'm like, all right, let me think, and I'll come up with a better idea that doesn't involve me possibly going to jail. But it's been an absolute privilege just, working with him.
And I think it's
Then,
really, not to cut you off, I think it's really cool how you're able to integrate a guy like Cash into your promotion. Like, that speaks to how well you're able to book, and also speaks to the versatility of Cash.
so guys like him, like guys will call me, they'll message me, and I'll have a conversation with them. What do you want to do? And then they'll tell me. And the best match in Stride history was between Cash Gordon and Jay Spade. They had the best match in the history of Stride. And as far as crowd reaction, the way it went, and so, and it was a bull rope match, or a dog collar match, whatever you want to call it. But they put in some hardcore stuff, and there's, and so anybody that comes in, they come in and we talk, and I ask them what they want to do. And you have guys like Axe Allward, who is so good at working with guys and telling them that doesn't look good or that looks stupid. And then I bring in guys like Brandon Espinoza, who, and then I brought in Sean, and then the AAPW Resurrection show was so, because I brought in all these old guys that were there that taught me, and then I put them in matches with some of our new guys, and they're all in the back, and I tell them, go talk to this guy. Gaylord Stevens is there, and I tell everybody, you have to go talk to Gaylord. This guy is the best guy to talk to. Edmund McGuire came to practice, and I'm like, shut up and listen to this guy. And I think that's what Stride has been successful, is because I show whoever comes in. If it's a deathmatch guy, Madman Pondo wrestled for me, and he pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, I know you're not into this stuff. How would you feel?" And I said, "Wait, you wanna?" He wanted to staple a dollar bill on Dalton's head. I said, "Yeah, go ahead." And then afterwards, Pondo was like, "You weren't at all like people. People made it sound like you were a stick in the mud." I'm like, "No." I said, "You just can't go out dropping the F-bombs and cut somebody's head off. And I said, you can't flip anybody off. You just got to treat it like you're at a school." And so anyway, but I'm able to talk to these people, show them respect, because you will never find an interview that I've done, or you will never hear me talk, and I will never badmouth a wrestler. So I'm very, to be honest, very picky about podcasts that I do, because I don't like people that badmouth wrestlers individually, because being a wrestler is so hard. Understanding how to wrestle, how to get over with a crowd, how to remember stuff is so hard. So I have the utmost respect for anybody who wrestles, whether it's a death match, whether it's this, it doesn't matter. If you wrestle and you come to my company, we can find a way to make it work. And so that's why I think a lot of people, Dalton Diamond told me that when he came to the show the other day, he was like, "You're the best booker I've ever worked for." And it's because I sit down with everybody, I have a conversation, I take what they want to do, and I try to find a way to make it work in my family-friendly company. And so, I mean, I could go on and on about, guys, and, Bull Johnson, he doesn't really wrestle for my company because we don't see eye to eye on the family-friendly aspect. But me and him, and we traveled everywhere together. Tennessee, SIC. I mean, I've probably wrestled Bull second or third than I have anybody else. So, and I love wrestling guys like Bull because they're easy. Wrestling bigger guys, if you go back and watch the Shawn Michaels versus Kane documentary on the WWE Network, Shawn Michaels is like, "Oh, wrestling The Undertaker, a big guy's easy. I get my butt kicked for 20 minutes. That's easy." And it sounds weird, but it is. And so, again, I got off track again
Oh no,
because I get excited talking about.
this is why we love having you on here. This has been great.
I get real excited. I get more excited talking about other wrestlers and other people than I do myself, because I'm such a fan, and guys will tell you, I go to an indie show, I used to get in trouble for sitting out in the stands and watching. And, I was at a show and I messaged Brandon Espinoza and I was like, "Dude, can I come up and wrestle with you sometime? I don't want to get paid. Like, I'm a fan. Like, I like watching you wrestle." And so that's how I am. And so I used to, Cash thought I didn't like him. And I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, I love you. Like, I want to work with you. Like, I think you're amazing." And guys don't see it because, when I'm at a company or I'm running a company, I got to be a certain way. But I watch the matches and I watch these guys and I'm a fan. I'm like, even if it's a death match or an indie match or whatever it is, I watch and I enjoy it. Like, me 35 years old with 3 kids being a school teacher, no, I can't have Cash stick a fork in my head, doesn't mean I don't enjoy watching him do it to Dalton Diamond. So it doesn't mean that I don't watch somebody else doing it. And I don't, and I'm just not the type of person you see guys like, oh, that's stupid or that's ignorant. No, if that's what you enjoy doing, you get one life to live. Go do it. And I'm going to enjoy it and I'm going to watch it. So whenever you ask me to talk about other people, I get real excited because you're just never going to hear me badmouth somebody who gets in the ring, who has trained. Now, if they haven't trained, then yeah, but no, when guys that get in the ring and do this, if I watch them, now if they ask me to critique them and tell them that's a different story because
right.
I'll watch Jay Spade. Jay Spade and Tony Flood had a match one time, and they came to the back and they asked me, and I said I didn't like it. And you have to have that hard, but that's Tyler Hatton, promoter, booker. That's like, you're not seeing my vision. You're not seeing what I'm seeing. And so, but I will never be like, Jay Spade, you suck. You're a terrible wrestler. I'm not that way because I enjoy aspects of, I tell them, Galloway, I like that you did this. I like that you said this. Zoe Moore, first ever women's champion. I'm going to talk about her really quick. I know we got to get off here.
Oh,
but
no, you're...
Zoe Moore was the first ever women's girl to graduate from her school, and she had trained for about 6 or 7 months, and she wasn't getting it. And so I sat down and I talked to her, and after that it like clicked, and all of a sudden she got it, and now she's so talented and she's getting so better, and she is, and it's hard because I don't want girls to wrestle guys just for school reasons. I do it some, but also I want her to be able to wrestle girls and do things to females and wrestle with females instead of, doing it with guys. And we do stuff with guys, but she's got it now. And when she goes out there, she looks realistic and her moves are good, and she's gotten so much better. And now we got a whole new group of trainees that, are getting it and getting better. And like I said, I could go on and on and on and about different people.
Well, this is the main reason why I want to do watch-alongs of Stride shows with you, because there'll be one. I know you'll have a lot of great things to say. I don't like to tell. I never tell anybody who comes on this show what they can or can't say. If someone, I've yet to do it, but if someone comes on here and wants to go F this and screw that, and this guy was a jerk, it's their platform. But I like the fact that both times now that I've had you on the show, it's been a lot of positive vibes. We need more positive vibes in this world, and
well,
we definitely get it with these episodes.
I love wrestling so much, and even looking back, like I do not have very many positive things to say about Pro Wrestling Collision, except like the people that I met, and I always find, my wife will tell you it's super annoying because I'm all the time, like I find positives in every situation. So but wrestling is the one thing that I just love more than, I can't quit it. I can't walk away from it because I absolutely love it. And I love every aspect of it. So when I talk about it and I talk about things, like I think about all the stuff that I love in it. And there are times when people ask me about a major company and I'm like, well, that's stupid. I'm not talking about the wrestler. I'm talking about the booking or the story or that match didn't, and there's times when I've met superstars who were kind of rude to me or jerks to me, and I'll say, well, that guy's a jerk. But I don't talk about his in-ring ability, or at least I try not to, because in my opinion, if you train to wrestle and you get in that ring, then you are a step up from somebody who didn't. And so good or bad, if you think this guy's terrible and this guy's horrible, get in the ring and be better than him. So that's my thought process on it. But yeah, like I said, when you ask me to talk about wrestlers, you bring them up, like I'm going to put them over to the moon because I've probably watched them. I've probably studied them. I probably wanted to wrestle them. And when I did, like, you know, Farmer Billy Hills always tells a story. I wrestled him and I was the champion and I refused to pin him. I was like, we're doing a disqualification. He's like, no, you're the champ. You have to lose. And I'm like, Farmer, I don't want to lose to you. I want to do a disqualification. And he was like, Tyler, we have to put you over. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I refuse. I like you too much. And that's how I am. So then that's the last thing that I'll say. At Stride, nobody has lost more than Heath Hatton. I've lost more matches than anybody else. And I've lost more than I've won. Because I can't help but I want to put people over. I don't know why, but it is, I wrestle somebody and I want them to beat me. And whether it's B-Rad or Savion or it's Farmer Billy Hills or it's Roger Mathis or it's Axe Allward, I like to lose. Because I like to give them that rub. And it's because of where I've been and what I've done. When somebody beats Heath Hatton, it's like, oh, they beat Heath Hatton. And so I like to give people that. And so if you come to a show, just the other day I lost to Cash Borden. And nobody in that build, not even Kevin Huntsberger, thought I was losing. Kevin came up to me outside and he goes, I did not know you were losing. He goes, it caught me off. I didn't know what to say. I stuttered.
That's awesome.
I love that. I love doing that, and I love giving that to people. And that's like, and when I can lose and give Cash Borden that rub, man, it's got me goosebumps now thinking about it. Like when the air went out of the building, like, oh, because they thought I was going to win, and I love that.
We need, like I said, the world needs a lot more positivity, and I'm certainly hoping that the people that listen to this episode feel more positive, because that's great. We have so much negativity going on right now. We need more people like yourself to be selfless and to bring that positive energy into the world. So thanks again for doing this. This was great. This is very insightful. This is one of my, I can tell you right now, this is one of my favorite ones I've done. This is great.
Well, like I said, I suck at putting my company over. I suck at putting myself over.
Oh no, you're good, man. You're great.
But no, like just if you're listening to this and you're near an area, go support some indie wrestling. Go watch. Those guys are killing themselves for next to nothing, and they're doing it to if you're into family friendly, that's my company. If you're into hardcore stuff, and a fight ground has you covered, and just wherever you are, if there's an indie show nearby, go support it. I promise you're going to have a good time, and you're going to enjoy it. And even if the match is bad, applaud it, love them, because they're trying their best. So,
you say you don't know how to put people over, but do you know how to for someone from outside of the area who might want to check out Stride? You have social media, YouTube, you want to let them know about so they can?
Yeah, we're really pushing our YouTube channel now because we're doing tapings. It's not, we don't have a professional camera or nothing like that. We're doing it, but we're putting our stuff out there. We're actually getting quite a few views, quite a few hits. People are really following. You can go back and look. We've put a whole bunch of stuff together, and there's been storylines since April that we've put together on these YouTube. So you can go to YouTube, look up Stride Pro Wrestling. You can see some of our old stuff. We put a whole bunch of other stuff up there. And then our Facebook page is, Stride Pro Wrestling, and it's on there, and you can find it. And yeah, go check it out and leave a comment and tell us what you think. And if you're going to badmouth somebody, badmouth Heath Hatton. That's a pretty popular thing to do on the internet sometimes. So I do. I used to go and copy and paste them and put them on my Facebook. They make me laugh. And so, yeah, go on there, check it out, watch, tell us what you think. And you see a lot of guys. There's a lot of Bull Bronson on there, Kevin Huntsberger, Bud Galloway, B-Rad. There's a lot of them on there. So you can check out the guys that were on the podcast and kind of see their journey and see where they've came and see where they've started from. And it's pretty neat to watch them evolve. So and just know that if you think they're good, I trained them. If you think they're bad, Jay Spade trained them. So that's the way I look at it.
And I'll definitely include a link in the description box. Loaded channel. Want to thank you again. Really insightful. I learned from this episode, and that's I love to learn new things. So that was great. And thank you, everyone, for listening. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like, share, subscribe for more content, not just from the world of pro wrestling, but from the world of comics, gaming, anime, and all things geek culture. Follow me on my social media pages, facebook.com/athleticgeek89, Twitter at athletic_geek89, Instagram at athleticgeek89. And if you would like to help grow the channel financially, check out my Patreon and we'll go from there. But thanks again to Heath Hatton. Check out Stride Pro Wrestling on YouTube and check out all those guys. They all work hard and they're all great people. We'll see you next time.